This is the first one, the inaugural episode of the Shutdown Inning Podcast. I know those of you who have waited a few days after the announcement. It is finally here, and I could guarantee you we are ready to go. Welcome in Stephen Rissotto with you. And who do I have next to me?
Hey, everybody, this is Tylor Hall, and welcome to the Shutdown Inning Podcast. I'm really excited to be here with you, Stephen. We had a great response to our announcement, and so I think that made us both even more excited than we were. And so excited to be here with you, partnering on a fun podcast, and hopefully, making some new friends along the way, and making those that we already have happy. So,
no doubt about it. How long did we take to plan this out? It took like a day, right? It was a day. We had this all figured out in a day.
Yeah, I mean, it happened very quickly. It wasn't like something that you and I have been talking about for weeks or months.
No.
It was just kind of like, hey, like maybe we should do a podcast together. And you're like, I'm down. I was like, well, I'm down too. So let's make it happen. And then, I think we came up with the name, and then we got some help from our good friend Doug Hayes on the logo. And that night we made an announcement like, hey, we have a podcast now, and here we are.
And we definitely thank everybody for responding so well to that announcement. Thanks for the kind words. It was awesome, and we're definitely ready to go. Just some background on us real quick. Those of you may know Tylor. Tylor, I mean, you are very well known on Giants Twitter for maybe one thing. What is that thing?
Yeah, you probably know me for standing up like a K a couple Aprils ago, April 2019. I was the first human K in at the time at Oracle Park. I don't even know if it was Oracle Park at the time. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. It was late. I don't even remember what the ballpark was called, but so I'm well known for that. That's been my profile picture ever since. But also I'm try to be active and engaging on Giants Twitter, try to keep it positive and fun. So I feel like a lot of people just know me from there.
That's what's up.
Yeah, that's what's up after every Giants victory. And I'm sure some people may have noticed an exclamation mark for every win in a win streak. So if it's the first, if they lost last night and they win tonight, 1 exclamation. If they win again tomorrow, 2. So, that's what's up. Sergio Romo is one of my favorite Giants, so I had to carry that on.
I didn't know that you do the exclamation points for the win streaks.
Yep. So every win, it goes up, and then when they lose, I start back at 1 exclamation.
I did not know that. That's pretty. I now I'm gonna look out for that.
Yeah, a little Easter egg for everybody.
Yeah, there you go, little Easter egg. I'm not as cool as Tylor. I cover the Giants for SF Bay. I have another podcast on the side. Go check it out, Rizzocast. Shameless plug. I'm trying to get
I'm
into...
friend of the program at Rizzocast. Everyone should give it a listen.
Yeah, Tylor and I are not new to doing podcasts together. We have done one. I had him on Rizzocast. He was great. We talked a lot about his baseball story. It was an incredible episode. So no, it's going to be awesome. We're going to have a fun time here. Like Tylor mentioned, we're going to have some guests on. It's going to be a really conversational show for the most part. So
I think if people have listened to Rizzocast, it's very, interview driven, and we're going to be kind of the opposite of that. It's going to be you and I just talking about topics, what's going on in baseball. Hopefully we'll get some guests along the way. And, at least if you're not a guest, hopefully you can get involved. You send us a topic you want us to talk about, or a question you have for us, and we'll talk about that. And, I think a lot of our listeners are going to be Giants fans, especially to start out. And we're going to try to, touch on Giants stuff as much as possible. But we are looking to touch, baseball in general, which you'll hear here in a few minutes as we get, as we roll through the podcast.
Is anything going on in the baseball world? I can't think.
A little something. I mean, we have at least I'm looking at one game going on right now, but we have one team in the World Series already. The Philadelphia Phillies clinched earlier today, which I'm just glad it's not the Dodgers. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, and we went into this thinking it would be the Dodgers. I mean, all that had happened, and they had won like 100 and something games during, like over 110. I don't even know the exact number.
111, I think it was.
Jesus.
It was 111.
Yeah, and everybody was going into postseason thinking they would be the favorite. Man, what happened?
I mean, they were the favorite. I mean, I think it just shows the team has to be hot at the right time. You can win 111 games in 6 months, and if you can't win 3 in a week, you're done. So, I think they had a pretty impressive record against the Padres this year too. And they just, luckily, thank you Padres for getting it done. But I'm glad that the Dodgers got beat. I'm going to be honest. I'm a petty Giants fan in that aspect. That I tell everyone I have two favorite teams: the Giants and whoever's playing the Dodgers. So I'm glad my second favorite team is now done in the playoffs because no one's playing LA anymore.
Yeah, and in a first round exit, and you probably saw it. I know you saw it. We were on the timeline, and we saw all the Dodger fans blaming the expanded postseason formatting. Like, I mean, baseball expanded it, and there was that cool wild card series. I happen to personally like it a lot. I thought that I was a little disappointed that more series didn't go to, game 3. I thought that would have been fun, but for the most part, it was exciting baseball. I mean, I think a lot of fans got into it, and I enjoyed it for sure.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. I think having a 1-game playoff in baseball is it's like the one sport where you just can't do that because, Bumgarner's done it a few times, a couple other guys where you could just run into a buzzsaw of a pitcher. You could have a one-off game or just play someone who's pitching out of their mind. And you could have 10, 15 more wins than them in the regular season, and then you're going home. So, I'm glad they have at least best of 3. I like that the home team gets all 3 games. It's kind of their advantage to, having a better record. I was curious to see, and I think it'll be a few years till we actually see it, but like, does that, 4 to 5 days off throw off the higher seeds? Is a bye in baseball valuable or not? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that there is something to that. I think definitely the team that's playing, like we saw from San Diego and like we saw from the Phillies, of course, obviously they're going to the World Series. There's momentum into playing, and not having that break. There's momentum playing into the division series. And I mean, the example that we use quite a bit is the 2012 World Series. When the Giants went in there, they were playing all those elimination games, and Detroit had 4, 5, 6 days off, and they looked completely stale and ended up getting swept in 4 games. So I agree with you. I do think it's, time will tell how that will affect the overall postseason landscape. But I mean, people say momentum doesn't exist. I mean, I think they're lying. I think there is some sort of momentum.
People who say that didn't play a lot of baseball growing up because it does exist. I think, I think time will tell. I think, even time will tell. It could be different for individuals on the same team. Some guys might need a break. Maybe, you have a guy who's thrown, well, nowadays they don't have too many of them, but threw up, 200 plus innings, needs, a skip of the spot in the rotation more or less that week off provides, that could be huge. If you have a guy who was hot coming down the stretch and then he sits for a week and now he picks up a bat, it could take him a minute to get it going. But, and a lot of those top, 1 or 2 seed teams that get the week off, they were probably resting some guys down the stretch already. So does that become like a 2-week break? When was the last time the Dodgers had played a meaningful game? They had clinched the division 3 weeks before the season was over.
June.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so, I think it's just going to be, to be honest, I mean, they're all professional athletes. If anything, I don't think it would ever cost everyone a whole best of 5 series, which is what the division series is now. Maybe make it a best of 7 if you want to throw an extra bone out to those tier teams, those top 1 or 2 teams, because it might take them a half of a game or something to get the juices flowing again. All right, cool. But it's not going to cost anyone a series. I think it would just be an easy scapegoat or an easy excuse for someone to point to and say, hey, this is, we had to sit, and okay, then win less games next year. I don't know. Let the Giants win the division. But I think as far as what has happened in the playoffs besides the Dodgers losing, I was really hoping that Seattle would get some at least a win they won the wild card, but a win at home for their fans who waited so long. I'm not a Mariners fan by any stretch, but I've been up there before. I saw a game at the Kingdome when I was in junior high,
how old are you?
Team that. Right. I'm 38, by the way.
Jeez.
Can't wait for Steven to turn 21 next year. Any fan that waits 21 years for their team to make the playoffs, you have to hope they at least see a win. I guess they at least saw 2 games for the price of 1 with that 18-inning marathon. But what was something else that happened in the postseason that you thought was interesting, or that you kind of thought was different, or you were hoping would have been changed?
Yeah, I liked Seattle going in. I thought that was a really cool story. You mentioned that drought. The Phillies also broke their drought. So like when the Mariners got in, it's like, okay, the Phillies, it's on you now. And then they immediately broke their drought. And their drought was only like, since 2011, I think. So it wasn't too long. But my bracket got screwed up, Tyler. It just got destroyed. I didn't have the Braves going, or I didn't have the Dodgers going to the World Series, but I had the Braves going to the World Series again. And I had the Braves repeating. And then on the American League side, I underestimated a few things. I completely underestimated the New York Yankees' ability to hit the ball out of the ballpark, because they've done it this postseason when it counts. And yeah, they hit a lot of home runs. We understand that. But, despite their guys, some of their big hitters right now slumping. Aaron Judge isn't hitting. Josh Donaldson's been horrible. Whatever. But Cleveland, I genuinely thought, and despite their bad offense, I thought that they would get to the World Series because they're pitching.
Wow.
Because I thought that Cleveland would have the pitching and the bullpen.
So you had a Guardians Braves World Series.
I did. I had a Guardians Braves World Series, and it didn't happen because I underestimated the Astros as well. They are loaded.
Yeah, I don't see how. I didn't officially make a bracket, but mentally I was thinking Dodgers, Yankees, which obviously Dodgers are out, but I just don't see how the Yankees win 4 in a row against the Astros right now, because they are just playing out of their minds. Their pitching has been solid. Then you got, it's Bregman, it's Alvarez, someone's going off every night. I can't wait for Dubon's playoff moment. But at this point, I think it's going to be the Astros. That's not a bold take by any stretch. They're up 3-0 on New York. So I think it'll probably be, the Astros, Phillies, and I think that'll be a fun series. But we'll see. The Yankees aren't dead yet. Oh, actually, a little bit of the Yankees just went up 5-4.
Wow, what happened?
Bader hit a solo shot to left. So we're in the bottom of the 6th. The Bader just put him up.
Wow.
So hey, they're not dead. So.
The only team in a championship series to come back from 3-0, I believe, is still the 2004 Red Sox.
Yeah, so maybe the Yankees can, reverse the curse of that series. So you never know. But I'm one of those weird people where, if you're outside of the rivalry, I feel like most people, the Yankees, Red Sox, I feel like everyone's like, okay, Red Sox, because I've hated the Yankees my whole life. I'm the opposite. I like the Yankees out of that rivalry 10 times out of 10. I've been to both. I had a lot of fun with Yankees fans, not a lot of fun with Red Sox fans. I love New York City. Boston's pretty cool too. But I think just, the history. And when I was a kid growing up in like the late 90s, early 2000s, people were like, oh, the Yankees just buy championships. And I was like, well, hell, like if my team had that much money, I'd want them to be spending it on the team too. So like, how can you get mad at that? It was more envy from a lot of people, I think, than like justification to get upset. And so I've always, so if the Yankees come back and head to the World Series, I won't be upset about it.
I think the hatred there is definitely an East Coast thing. So it's either an East Coast thing for like the current, day, but if we're talking about like, people like you who grew up when they were really good, the dynasty years in the mid to late 90s, and you're just watching the Yankees every year, I could see how, somebody could hate the Yankees. But for me, there's never been any blood against the Yankees. Like their fan base might be obnoxious, but it's a really, really big market, the biggest in the game. And I just have never had an experience where I had to hate the Yankees.
Yeah.
So
I think maybe if I grew up with an American League team being my favorite team, and the Yankees were just going to the World Series every year, I might have been like, all right, screw these guys. But New York's awesome. The history's awesome. If you ever go, Monument Park's a must see. So, but we'll see. But if the Astros go on too, I don't think I'll be rooting for a team. I'll be rooting for a good series. But at least if the Astros go on and win, I'll be happy for Dusty Baker. He is Roger Craig's the first Giants manager I remember, but like when I could really understand the game, and he's the first manager that I remember that like could kind of watch and be like, oh, like Dusty pulled that guy. I want, let's see how that plays out. Or obviously some calls in 2002 where he let someone walk away with a baseball, but he's from Sacramento too, which is where I'm from. And so, I'd be happy for him if he finally got a ring as a manager.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd have any rooting affiliation either. I would be happy for Dusty too. I want to say he's the winningest manager without a World Series ring, and that's significant. I think he'd go in the Hall of Fame regardless, because he's such a cultural icon in baseball and someone who's been around forever, and he's been a part of historic moments. And he's cleaned up the mess in Houston. He really has, and this is the deepest team that he's had since he's gotten there, and it's going to be exciting to watch. And on the other side of it, I'm a big Bryce Harper fan. I've always liked Bryce Harper, and I tweeted this earlier, but I'm just really happy to see the way he's matured. There was a time where it looked like he needed to be led, and now he's the leader. He's the leader. He puts his head down. He rakes when he's on the field. He's had some weird injuries, but he's worth every penny of that contract, I think. And, he's really done kind of a 360 since when he first came up. He was young. He was 19, but I'd be really excited to see Bryce Harper get a ring.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like a lot of people just don't like the guy. He came up, like you said, he was 19. He was young. He didn't, imagine, I guess you could imagine a year ago for you, but,
Nice.
but like imagine back to like being that age. Okay, like you're one of the biggest baseball stars in the world. Have more money than you'll ever know what to do with. Like you might be like, okay, like you might not always I could see how he acted could have rubbed some people the wrong way. As a lot of the old man get off my lawn getting mad at him.
And he was kind of spoiled too. He was 15 years old on the cover of Sports Illustrated. They hyped him up. He's
like literally the LeBron James of baseball.
Exactly. He skipped high school and stuff. He went through junior college, was drafted really early. And it was wild the way he came up so quick. So,
yeah.
Reese
Hoskins, Sac State's finest, my alma mater. He's been going off this playoff. Schwarber's playing well. So Wheeler, former Giants prospect. I think a lot of people might just look at the Phillies and be like, okay, whoever comes out of the American League is just going to run through them. But they're, they can be scary. Their whole lineup from top to bottom can be pretty legit. You have Nick Castellanos, who, didn't really have a year like he did last year. And he's, down hitting probably 6th or 7th in that lineup.
Yeah, something like that.
That's insane. And so we'll see. A question that a friend of mine came up today with me today, and I want to see your thoughts, Steven. Do you think the Phillies going to the World Series sends a bad message to other teams to not have to worry about spending a lot of money? Not that the Phillies don't spend a lot, but they won I think it was 86 games, and now they're going to the World Series. What kind of do you worry at all that could send front offices not going all in on trying to build a 111 win team?
No, because I think teams are never gonna build a team and say yes, 87 wins. That doesn't make sense. If they're gonna build a team, it's gonna be to, build a team for 110 wins like the Dodgers. Yeah. I can never see a team spending money and saying, okay, I think we could, be the fifth best team in the National League this year. We're gonna get
to the World Series.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, look at the Phillies right now. Like they won 87 games, and nobody cares about the regular season anymore because everybody's so situated on a 7-game series right now. That's what they're playing for right now. And when you get in, anything could happen. That's the cool thing about baseball. Like basketball, we know who's going to meet up in the finals before the season even starts. You could put money down right now and feel pretty comfortable about your decision.
It's going to be like 4 or 5 teams in basketball between both conferences that it's going to be like one of these 2 teams from the West, one of these 2 teams from the East.
Yeah, exactly.
And 90% of the time you can be right with that.
Yeah, I just think that baseball is so different in that way, and I think it's for the better. I really do, and I think that the Phillies are set up because they have two horses at the front end of the rotation, and they have a bullpen which looked really bad a few years ago, and now like it looks really good. So
Yeah, I think they won 86 or 87, but they're not like an 87 win team. They had a lot of injuries throughout the year.
yeah,
Harper missed a good chunk of time. Schwarber missed a little bit of time, especially near the end of the year. So they might have won that many, but they're easily, like, if everyone stays healthy, they're like a mid 90s at least in my mind. So
and they fired their manager in the beginning part of the year, so that's wild.
Yeah, I mean, do both managers get a ring if they win the World Series?
I was thinking
Players who
about
get
that
traded
too.
win. Players who get traded win or get a ring.
So is
So
getting fired the equivalent of getting traded? Or I feel like it might be
it
worse.
kind of is. They're getting cut. It's like getting DFA'd or something. Dan Uggla has a ring with the Giants.
He does.
Like, so it'll be interesting to see.
And Girardi
But
brought Rob Thompson on his staff. Like Rob
yeah,
Thompson's been with him since the Yankees. So that's some big
yeah,
brain stuff right there.
yeah. And so yeah, we'll see. Like I said, it's the top of the seventh, 5-4 Yankees. We'll see if we have a World Series matchup by the end of the night tonight. But speaking of managers winning World Series rings, there's a new manager down for the Texas Rangers who's won a few World Series rings, and here's going to be probably our Giant centric portion of this episode for us. But Bruce Bochy becoming the manager of the Texas Rangers. What were your reactions to that?
I was like taken aback by it, but I wasn't shocked. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
shocked for the sole reason that every interview he's done since he retired, he has never ever said absolutely not, I'm not ever coming back, never. He's not, even right after he retired, they had the farewell and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next year they're like, oh, do you miss it, and then every winter there's a whole managerial, everybody's
Yeah.
moving everywhere. Bob Melvin's going to San Diego, and when that San Diego job opened, they're like, oh, Bochy, do you want to go back to San Diego? And oh, I'm not going to rule anything out. I need time. And that's why I wasn't shocked, because he's been
Yeah.
hinting at it this entire time. And, Texas has a new cowboy in town. And, um, I know we're going to get into it in just a second about whether he was forced out or not. I definitely have some takes on that. But as for my initial reaction, I knew he was interviewing for it. I had seen that report, and I had
Yeah.
seen the whole connection with Chris Young, who he managed with San Diego, and they had that connection there. Um, but I was taken aback by it, but not shocked. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like my first reaction, and it went away really quick, but my first reaction was just to be kind of a little bummed that, like, I thought, like, he's the Giants manager. Like, he, growing up, like, I thought I would never see the Giants win a World Series, and he helped bring three. And I think you could argue, a lot of times the talent's the talent, but with those teams, without Bochy running them, you could argue maybe that they don't win any of those, except maybe 14. Maybe a Bumgarner was on a mission, but I was just a little bummed because I feel like, it was great that, he ended his career with the Giants as a legend. He's got his ticket to Cooperstown punched already.
Delayed.
Yeah, now it's delayed. I also like, seeing him around at the ballpark. He'd come to different events, and he came out at the 2012 team reunion this year carrying the trophy. Stuff like that I'm going to miss as a Giants fan. But like I said, that went away really quick. I was like, oh, that kind of sucks. And I was like, hey, if he wants to keep managing, good for him. I'm happy for him. I'm not, I'll be happy if the Rangers do well. So, good for him. I think, like you said, I might as well just roll into it now. The whole forced out thing. I think that I think it's taking 3 years for him to take another spot. As you mentioned, like the Padres gig last year, there's been some good spots open up that he, I think if he would have told the Padres, like, hey, I'm interested, I think there's a good chance that he could be the Padres manager right now. I personally don't think, I think he saw the writing on the wall with where Farhan would want to go. And he was just like, that's not my cup of tea. My contract's up anyway. He's also old. The other thing that was kind of shocking was he's 67. He's going to turn 68 right after next season starts. So if he makes it through all 3 years of his contract, he's going to be 70 at the end of his contract. That's 50 years from now for you, Steven. Do you want to still be working in 50 years? So that's all that kind of surprised me. But, they've shown, and he said this, he's not afraid, they've shown they're not afraid to spend money, and he thinks he can make them a winner. So we'll see. But I thought, as far as the Giants were concerned and his departure, I don't think he was forced. I think he saw the writing on the wall and was just like, yeah, this isn't a direction I want to go in. I'm going to at least take a break. He made the announcement that he was retiring. They could have just said, like, after this year, like, I'm taking a break. He said he's the one who, Bochy's not going to say anything that he doesn't want to say. And he said he's the one who had the retirement announcement and everything. So but like you said, he never closed the door officially about coming back. So I'll let you take it now. I don't think he was forced. I think, organization's going one way, he manages a totally different way.
I agree 100%. And if he was forced, why would that happen in spring training? Why would that happen where, not to say that Bruce Bochy would ever like do anything to hurt the team or anything. It's still his reputation on the line. But like, wouldn't that be a less motivating thing to be told, we're not going to bring you back next year and you got to sit through 162 games? Like, that would suck. Yeah. So like, if anything, if he's forced out, that's something you're hearing in mid-August, and they're like, we're not going to bring you back next year. And then you have the whole farewell thing. You have the
it would be ovations. Just like when Barry left. They waited, and then like mid-August after he broke the record, they're like, we're not bringing Barry back after this year. That's how they would have done it.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
Would have done it the same way.
I mean, 162 games with, they don't want me here. That's on your mind. No, there's no way that happened. There's no way that, especially ownership who's very close to Bochy. I agree with you on the writing on the wall part of things. When Sabean left, and Brian Sabean was very close with Bruce Bochy. I mean, they were partners in crime. They talk about how they're partners in crime. They made decisions together. They were there after every game. And when he left, I mean, it's kind of like you lose someone who's been there with you for the entire run of it, and now you don't have them. And now you have somebody who has a completely different ideology than you, and to say that Bochy had an issue with Farhan Zaidi is stupid. Cause again, first day of spring training, you haven't even played a game with him as your, general manager or baseball ops guy. So, I mean, that's one part of it. And, another thing that I can't stand is everybody's bringing Gabe Kapler into this. Like, no, stop. Yeah. Gabe Kapler is so relevant. The fact that everybody's saying, oh, well, Farhan chose Kapler over Bochy. That's not true. Kapler was managing in Philadelphia.
He just happened to be the next guy in after Bochy left.
Exactly. There's only 30 managerial positions, and Gabe Kapler had one of them. And he had a roster at the time that was like, okay, we could flirt with a postseason here. And they underperformed. He's going to be the first one to tell you that they underperformed, and he lost his job. Maybe if they win for him, he's still there. And he was available, and he had a connection with Zaidi, and that's how these things work. The personal connections and
there was like 2 or 3 names down to the wire where it was like, who are the Giants going to pick? It wasn't just like, all right, we need a manager. Yeah. Kapler's our guy. So.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't buy the whole, I mean, Gabe Kapler does not, I think I admire him a lot. I've learned a lot from him. And I think he's a pretty good manager, but he doesn't need to get brought up every single conversation regarding Bruce Bochy, because there's no comparison there. It's tough to compare. But I want to ask you,
to be honest, it's a lot. Go ahead.
No,
I was just going to say it's very similar to the Aaron Judge and Barry Bonds with the home run chase. People couldn't talk about Aaron Judge hitting 62 without talking about Barry Bonds. And it kind of detracted from what Judge did. He had one of the best seasons ever, and it ended up being a debate about it. And so it's kind of the same thing with Bochy. Like, you can't bring up Bochy without Kapler. And it sucks. It kind of detracts from what Bochy did in my mind.
The exact same thing. Yeah, that's a good comparison. But I wanted to ask you, because there's another thing going around this. And I was thinking about it. I was thinking when I saw the question, is Bochy going to be the next La Russa? He's older. You mentioned the age. And like, I'll give you my thoughts here real quick. I think La Russa's gap is way, not just numerically bigger than Bochy's, but also in terms of like significance. Like La Russa retired first in 2011, and
Mm-hmm.
so much happened between 2011 and 2021. So much more numbers,
Mm-hmm.
Statcast, just a completely different way in developing players, all like such a big gap. Bochy in 2019, like what really advanced? Like maybe a few better cameras, but there's still a lot of that pitch com, 3 batter minimum, a few rules, DH.
Yeah, there's some different rules.
Yeah,
Like I tweeted my first tweet after he got the job was he's going to hate the 3 batter minimum.
100%.
But there's a few different rules like that. But it's like if those rules really bother him, he wouldn't have tried to become a manager again. So and I think La Russa coming back and already as like he was already a Hall of Fame baseball person, as he's famously known as saying.
Nice.
I think maybe he had an extra kind of like my S don't stink kind of attitude with his players, and Bochy's always been a player's manager, at least from what I've never been in the clubhouse with him, but his players loved him. He always had his players back, and I think he's a little more in tune with players nowadays than La Russa was or is, and so yeah, I'm not really worried about. I think I do think he is a lot of managed by your gut,
Mm-hmm.
and the way he could run a bullpen, perfect example. So I think kind of just adjusting a little bit, and he's probably going to have to get in a little more into analytics, but I'm not too worried about. I think he knows all that. I think he's hasn't been away from. It's not like he retired after 2019 and then just stopped paying attention to the game. So he knows what's going on.
Yeah, I think
he'll do fine.
Chris Young will give him. He would not have accepted the job if Chris Young did not say. If Chris Young went ahead and said, we're going to talk, we're going to collaborate on this, but you're going to run the team. We'll collaborate. I know you collaborated with Sabian. We're going to have that same dynamic, but on the field stuff, it's your team. And I don't think it's as literal as, calling from the dugout and saying, Bruce, put in, this pitcher, but he's got a good roster to work with. It's very, it's very up and coming. And they, like you mentioned, they put money into it. They just don't have any pitching, which
I'm interested to see what they said they were like going to do this off season, like what their plan is that made him like, okay, like
Belt.
Yeah. But I mean, a Belt Bochy reunion would not be out of the question. Kershaw's from Texas. I mean, yeah, it could be very interesting down there. And I don't think, they won, I think it was 68 games this year. So they obviously, to get him excited to come take the job, they must have outlined some big plans for this off season. So we'll see what they do.
Yeah.
And, as long as they don't have a matchup against the Giants, if they make it to the playoffs, I'll be rooting for Bochy to do well.
You know who didn't get the Rangers job?
Who?
Ozzie Guillen. That was a good segue, wasn't it?
Good segue. Yeah, I mean, he's there's rumors out there he's talking to the Chicago White Sox again, taking Tony La Russa's spot. Look at us going full circle, Steven, already. Episode 1, and it's like we've been doing this for years. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see if he comes back. I don't know. Do you remember when you started following baseball? He was managing the White Sox around that time, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, I do remember a little bit of the White Sox, but I remember him when he was with the Marlins too. And the Marlins brought in that they did that whole roster revamp, and they brought in Jose Reyes, and they brought in Mark Burley, and they had Hanley Ramirez still there, and that was supposed to be a really good team that was going to turn some heads. And then the Marlins did what the Marlins usually do, and they tore it all apart. But Ozzie Guillen was the manager of that team, and I just know that he's a very fiery character, and he's like, a manager that I can't see taking any. So like we keep mentioning like the whole control stuff and how much control these managers have, and whether or not you could actually get away with putting a robot there. Ozzie Guillen is not a robot. And if he gets told to do something that he doesn't like by a front office member, he's going to go off and he's going to tell you his mind and his piece of it. So I mean, that would be an interesting reunion. But that is the most sought after job in baseball in my mind right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're built to win. They underperformed this year completely. They were in the playoffs last year. So, I mean,
Health.
Yankees, Jordan Alvarez, RBI single to right, tie ball game, top 7 now.
Oh boy. And Alvarez has been
And
quiet in that series. Him and
yeah,
Altuve have not really hit.
yeah, and Astros still have men at the corners, 1 out. But yeah, I mean, how could you not want to manage if you're a manager or an MLB caliber manager, who wouldn't want to manage the White Sox? And so, yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. It's interesting that, he's managed for that organization before. I'm sure there's been some turnover like in the front office, but I think like the ownership's the same, but, different roster now completely, or maybe you just needed a change back then. Guillen's obviously, he's a baseball lifer, like most managers are. That's not like a crazy statement about a manager, but he's been around the game. He's another guy who, even when he stopped managing, he didn't disappear. He's been on, he's done work for some broadcasts and whatnot. So we'll see. I mean, if the shoe fits, hopefully it ends better for him than it did last time. But he'll be one of those guys that not a lot of managers get thrown out anymore nowadays, and he'll get the thumb a few times for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And the Marlins manager job is opening up. It's been interesting to see how many of these interim managers have had that tag taken off. John Schneider in Toronto got an extension, and Phil Nevin, they're going to try for 1 more year. And I'm blanking on one that just got extended too, who got the interim tag. They're yelling at their screens at me right now, Tyler.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah, they're probably yelling at me too because I'm blanking on it as well.
Somebody else got their interim man. Oh, I'm an idiot. Rob Thompson.
Oh,
so with the Phillies.
Yeah,
exactly. So there's going to be some turnover there for sure. And Ozzie Guillen, I guess the only thing he could argue is balls and strikes right now.
Yeah, there we go. I was thinking
segue.
the same thing. So there's our segue. Yeah, the last thing I wanted to talk about was, I don't know if everyone's seen this, but the minor league season's over. So is this just like, was it instructional league? I don't even know what league it was in.
Arizona Fall League.
Arizona Fall League. Yankees minor leaguer challenged a ball and strike call. It was a call to strike. He challenged it within about 8 or 10 seconds. They said, nope, that was a ball. It was ball 4, and he was walking to first base. So, all this technology, especially with baseball, with it being, 150 plus years old, it's something that we've never seen before, like much like the pitch clock will be next year for a lot of people. How do you feel about this, Steven? Like, is this good for baseball, bad for baseball? Should they just go full robot ump or all human ump? Like,
they are definitely dipping their feet into a full robot ump. This is the beginning of it. And I was early on, I think I was a very staunch supporter of robot umpires fully, but you'd still have an umpire there and he'd have an earpiece in and he'd hear from upstairs or whatever, strike, and then he makes the call, strike. Eric Burns did it in the independent league, and I believe San Rafael or Sonoma, and it worked out successfully. But my only worry is that hitters are different. There's different stances, there's different heights, there's different arm lengths, there's different everything with the strike zone, and that you'd have to make sure the technology is up for that, and to make sure that it adjusts for everybody. Because and another drawback is I hate the K zone on the screen. I hate it because I hate when a pitch is a little bit off the plate and it's a called strike 3 and the guy doesn't agree. It's like, what were we told in Little League? Swing if it's close. Yeah. And but it's not mathematically in the strike zone. So I don't like that. I still like pitch framing, but
I'm a former catcher. I used to love framing. It definitely takes an aspect out of the game that, guys work on. Like, there's guys that have literally had a whole big league career almost because they were amazing defensive catchers, and being able to frame a pitch is a big part of that.
Now you just got to hit.
Yeah, that's the only That's the only part of it that I really don't like. Technologies nowadays, Astros take the lead, Bregman RBI single. But technology's there nowadays that they can make it for a robot ump that it would take into account, the guy's height or his stance or whatnot. I think
and in terms of this particular, like the challenging versus strike, I like it because I think they're doing it for pitchers too. So a pitcher could challenge a strike call or a ball call.
I'd be interested to see, like, does each player get like a challenge that he can use, and if he's right, he gets to keep it. It's not going to. It can't dip into like the manager's challenges of like an actual call. I don't think.
Yeah, I feel like the hitter should be the only one. Yeah, that makes sense. It should not be a manager challenge. That would be lame.
Yeah,
but maybe you
like, imagine if a guy like challenges the call and you're like, what are you doing? And then eighth inning comes around and the tying run gets called out of the plate and you can't challenge, but he was safe. But
yeah, or like how many because if it's one time, like if it's like 3 times a game and you use it, and like, can you imagine the offense just getting mad at one guy for using it in the first inning of an at bat? Like, you used one of our strike challenges.
Yeah, one guy uses like 2 of them in the first 2 times through the lineup.
Yeah. The best part of that video though was it showed on the scoreboard the pitch coming
the whole
in.
Crowd sees, like,
it showed the pitch FX on the scoreboard, and MLB, like, and granted, for the most part, umpires like do a pretty good job. There's moments where they don't, but like if you look at the scorecards, they're pretty good. And MLB like historically has backed their umpires pretty well. They've stuck up for them. They would not embarrass their umpires like that, but I thought that was hilarious.
Well, my next point was going to be, maybe this, because ideal world, I would say, keep the human umpire, but some of these strike zones just get out of control.
Yeah.
They do get analyzed more. There are those, umpire scorecards that come out and stuff, and those are good. But maybe like this is like almost like all right, guys, like get your shit in gear, because we have this ability now. And if you want to keep making up your own strike zone, Angel Hernandez, you're not going to be calling balls and strikes anymore, because we're going to have this robot do it from now on, because you can't get it right. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's almost like a good, warning shot of sorts, if you will, to like, okay, like tighten your zone up. Let's keep it to the traditional strike zone, and otherwise we'll have to go this way.
Yeah, and screw you if you're an umpire and you're saying, I'm a low ball guy, or I like it inside, or I like it outside to a righty. Come on.
Yeah, it's nuts when you like tune into a Giants game and it's nothing against Kruk. Kruk knows what they're doing. He's like, here's Steven Rissotto. He's a low zone guy. He sometimes he'll give away the outside corner a little bit. It's like, no, like it's like a first base umpire, and if they were like, every once in a while if you're a half step late, he'll give you the call. It's like, no, like you're either out or you're safe. It's a ball or it's a strike. There's no interpretation anywhere else for an umpire. So why,
And some home plate umpires, like, they look in through, like, if it's a righty, they peek their head in on one side, and then other guys peek their head in through the other side, and like you get a different angle every time. So it's like, how is any of this consistent with the human doing? Sometimes I question, how do humans do this? And especially on the foul balls, especially like, how can you tell at the plate, or especially when there's a foul at the plate and the umpires get together and the first base umpire says something like, oh yeah, he fouled it. How can you tell? How do you even know that? You're 90 feet away.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I if it's a really bad call, I'll complain about an umpire here or there. But people I don't think realize how hard of a job it is. And guys are throwing harder now more than ever, more movement now more than ever. Like, so it's tough. But you still got to, no one's forced them to become a major league umpire. So you have to still be good at your job if that's what you want to do for a living.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to sign up to become a punching bag.
Yeah.
But definitely, I guess one thing, if I were to make a PSA, sign up to umpire youth sports, because there's a shortage everywhere from what I've heard. So
yeah, because people see videos of parents going nuts and trying to fight umpires who are volunteering their time. So that's a whole nother.
That's a whole other. I was just going to ask.
Episode 2.
Episode 2. I know you have a very young son. When he gets to the age where he's playing baseball and stuff, are you going to get ejected? Because I feel like that should be on your bucket list.
Get ejected from my son's Little League game? Absolutely not.
No, yes. The answer is supposed to be yes.
Why would I want to get kicked out of my son's game?
Because it's a story. You'd have a story.
Yeah, that's not a story you want. In like 10 years, when you find some lucky lady and you have a family, we'll revisit. And I'll say, Steven, you want to get kicked out of your kid's Little League game? And I guarantee you won't say yes.
10 years. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, so, I'm 38. My son Hunter, which a lot of you know at least about, he's a little over 2 now. So, so I had him when I was 36. So maybe, maybe it's 15 years, Steven, but you never know. But not on the bucket list at all. I thought you were gonna ask if I would want to coach or something, not get kicked out of a game. But
well, I knew the answer to that one, so just had to check. No, Tyler, I think we nailed it. First episode,
Yeah.
we did really good.
We did it. Thank you everyone again for the warm response. We hope you like the shutdown inning. And like we said earlier in the episode, we're going to try to keep it interactive. We're going to have guests from time to time, but we want everyone to be like a part of the show. It's not just Steven and I talking. So if you have any questions you want us to answer, or any topics you're interested on our opinions on, please shoot us hit us up in the DM, or comment on the tweet for this podcast. Just let us know, and we want to have this become a whole conversation, not just between you and me, Steven, but anyone else who wants to get involved.
Yeah, of course. And Joe from Oklahoma could call in and everything, and we could get that going on. And Joe,
yeah,
Doug Hayes, all those Giants chatter people could ask their questions. I know that they're really good at that. So we definitely want to open it up, and I echo everything Tyler said. And hopefully going to get rolling on social media. You guys could follow us on Twitter. I believe it's at @shutdown_inning. So go check that out.
Yeah.
That should be a lot of fun.
Give us a follow. Well, I think we'll have some links out soon, so you can follow and subscribe and all those wonderful things. And by the next time you hear from Steven and I, we'll know. We'll probably be a game or two into the World Series even. I don't know. We'll see when we record next, but it'll be before the World Series is over, that's for sure. And we'll have that matchup. And so we'll have some, the title of Major League Baseball on the line next time we chat, my friend.
This is going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. Well, this was a great first episode. How do we wrap this up now? I feel like we're so in depth in this.
I guess we have to shut it down.
Oh, okay. There we go. Keep doing that, please.
But yeah, thank you all for listening. This is the Shutdown Inning, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you later.